The chains rattled as they dragged her forward, each metallic whisper echoing through the grand plaza of Vulcanus Prime. Fair kept her head high, her silver fur matted with filth and blood, but her violet eyes remained fixed on the distant spires of the Imperial Palace. The crowd had already begun to gather, their jeers intensifying as she was paraded through the main thoroughfare. Traitor! Human lover! The words spat from dozens of mouths, each one a vulpine face twisted with rage and prejudice. Rotten fruit and waste pelted her body as the guards forced her to walk the shame route, a centuries-old ritual reserved for those who betrayed the Empire. Her uniform, once pristine and bearing the honored crest of the Imperial Royal Guard, was now torn and stained. Each tattered edge reminded her of the trust she had placed in her superiors, a trust now shattered beyond repair. "Look at her," someone shouted. Former Royal Guard, brought low by consorting with inferior species. Fur's jaw clenched, but she refused to respond. The truth was, she had never betrayed anyone. The evidence they claimed to possess, documents showing she had leaked Imperial secrets to human resistance groups, had been fabricated. But in a society where humans were barely considered citizens, merely speaking in their defense was enough to mark one as a traitor. The processional continued, winding through the opulent commercial district where Vulpine nobles shopped in stores that would never admit a human customer. Crystal spires caught the twin suns' light, casting prismatic shadows across the crowd. The beauty of the architecture stood in stark contrast to the ugliness of the spectacle. "Enough of this," growled Jarek, the captain of the Imperial Guard who had once been her mentor. He grabbed her chain and yanked her forward. "Pick up the pace, traitor." The crowd grows restless. As they rounded the corner into the central trading plaza, Fair noticed something different. Among the sneering Vulpine faces, there were humans, dozens of them, pressed against the barriers, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and fear. In Vulpine society, humans occupied the lowest rung, serving as laborers, merchants, and occasionally skilled technicians. They rarely dared to watch such spectacles, knowing they could easily become the next targets of Imperial wrath. One figure in particular caught her attention. A human male, taller than most of his species, stood near the front of the crowd. Unlike the others who kept their eyes downcast, he met her gaze directly. His dark hair was shot through with premature silver, and his eyes held an intensity that made her pause. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. The guards continued their abuse, one particularly zealous officer grabbing a handful of her fur and using it to wrench her head back. "Look at all these loyal citizens," he sneered. "They know what you are." Pain shot through her skull, but Fair remained silent. She had endured worse during her years of training. What hurt more was the betrayal, not just of her position, but of her ideals. She had believed the Empire could eventually evolve, could one day treat all species with dignity. Now she knew how naive that hope had been. The human male moved closer to the barrier. Guards immediately turned their weapons toward him, plasma rifles that could reduce him to ash in seconds. But he didn't flinch. "Stop," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "This isn't justice. This is persecution." The crowd fell silent, stunned by his audacity. Vulpines did not suffer humans to speak out, especially not in defense of one of their own. Jarek's lips curled back, revealing razor-sharp teeth. "Silence, human scum, or you'll join her in chains." The human's companion, a female of his species, grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back. "Parker, don't," she hissed. "You can't help her by getting yourself killed." Parker. The name clicked in Fur's mind. She had heard rumors about him. A human who worked as an information broker, someone who moved through both worlds but belonged to neither. Some said he had connections that ran deep into both human and Vulpine societies. "No, Kenna," Parker replied, his eyes still locked on Jarek. "I can't watch this anymore." Before anyone could react, Parker vaulted over the barrier. Guards converged on him immediately, but he moved with surprising speed and precision. Years of surviving in the dangerous Undercity had honed his reflexes to near Vulpine standards. He ducked under the first guard swing, using the officer's momentum to spin him into two others. In the chaos, Parker managed to grab a security override device from the nearest guard's belt, a small cylinder that could temporarily disable containment fields and restraints. "Get her chains!" Kenna shouted from beyond the barrier, throwing what looked like smoke grenades into the crowd to create confusion. Fair felt the familiar touch of the override device against her restraints. The chains loosened, and for the first time in 3 days, she could move freely. But freedom in the middle of the Imperial capital, surrounded by armed guards, was an illusion. This way, Parker grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a maintenance access tunnel he must have scouted earlier. More guards were streaming into the plaza now, their advanced armor gleaming as emergency lights began to flash. They plunged into the narrow passage as plasma fire scorched the walls behind them. The tunnel system beneath Vulcanus Prime was extensive, a necessary infrastructure for a city that sprawled across several levels. Parker seemed to know every twist and turn, leading them deeper into the shadowed world where humans lived and worked. "What?" Fair gasped as they ran, her feet pounding against metal grating. "Why save me?" "Because someone needs to know the truth," Parker replied without slowing. "And because I know you're innocent." They emerged in the lower city, where the architecture changed dramatically. Gone were the soaring spires and crystal surfaces. Here, buildings were functional, made of steel and concrete, stacked vertically to maximize the limited space allocated to human habitation. The air was thicker here, recycled through aging filters. Kenna was waiting for them with a modified hover vehicle, its engine humming quietly. "Get in. They'll have patrols hunting for you within minutes." As they sped through narrow alleys that official vehicles couldn't navigate, Fair finally had a moment to catch her breath. Her Royal Guard training had prepared her for many scenarios, but not for being framed for treason, publicly shamed, and rescued by humans. "The data center," Parker was saying to Kenna. "We need to access the secure files." "Are you insane?" Kenna's knuckles were white on the steering controls. "The Imperial database is the most heavily guarded system in the Empire." "Not the Imperial system," Parker corrected. "The shadow network Dravik uses to move information. If anyone knows who really set Fair up, it's him." Fair studied Parker in the dim light of the vehicle. "How do you know about shadow networks? About any of this?" Parker's smile was bitter. "Let's just say I used to run in different circles before I learned that loyalty to the wrong people can get you killed." They arrived at what appeared to be an abandoned factory in the industrial sector. Inside, however, was a sophisticated operation. Modified data terminals, communication arrays that could reach across star systems, and enough computing power to rival some military installations. "Welcome to my real office," Parker said, noticing her surprise. "The information broker business is just my cover. I track the real power movements in this sector, the deals between imperial nobles and off-world cartels, the weapon shipments that never appear on official manifests." As Parker interfaced with the systems, Fair learned his story. He had once worked for a human security firm that did contract work for the Empire. 3 years ago, his team had stumbled upon evidence of corruption within the noble houses. Instead of being commended for their findings, they were systematically eliminated. Parker survived only by faking his death and disappearing into the lower city. "That's when I started tracking the patterns," he explained, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "Dravik is the key. He's a Vulpine black market information dealer who sells secrets to the highest bidder, including evidence that can frame innocent people." The terminal screen filled with encrypted data streams. "There," Kenna pointed. "That pattern matches the timestamps from Fur's case file. Can you decrypt it?" Fair asked, moving closer. She recognized some of the codes. They were from the Royal Guard's secure communication protocols. "Already on it," Parker replied. "These files, they're communications between someone in the Imperial Palace and Dravik. Look at this." Text filled the screen. Phase 1 complete. The Guard has been successfully implicated. Initiate public shame protocol. Phase 2 begins once human sympathies are confirmed among the general population. Fair felt her stomach clench. This wasn't just about punishing me. This was planned. As a catalyst, Parker nodded. Classic divide and conquer strategy. Frame a respected guard for human sympathy. Use public hatred to justify harsher restrictions on human rights. But who would orchestrate something like this? Fair wondered aloud, though deep down, she feared she already knew. The answer came in the form of another decrypted file. From Vexera to Dravik, continue as planned. Father must see the danger of human influence before it's too late. Princess Baksha whispered. The Emperor's daughter, heir to the throne. Brilliant, ambitious, and harboring a deep-seated hatred for any notion of human equality. We need more evidence, Kenneth said. Encrypted communications aren't enough. We need recorded conversations, transaction records, proof that will stand up even in an imperial court. That means accessing Dravik's main server, Parker said grimly. And that's in the entertainment district, where security is significant. The entertainment district of Volcanus Prime was where the dangerous thrived. It was the one place where species mingled freely. Vulpine crime lords, human entrepreneurs, off-world mercenaries, and beings from a dozen other systems. It was also where Dravik maintained his primary operation, hidden in plain sight beneath a legitimate nightclub. Getting there required them to navigate through several checkpoints. Kenna had prepared false identification that would hold up to basic scans, but Fur's distinctive appearance, her guard scars and missing fur patches from her imprisonment, would raise immediate suspicion. I can't go in like this, Fair said, looking at her reflection in a polished surface. Already thought of that. Kenna produced a silver capsule. Quantum disguise overlay. It'll create a holographic shell around you, but it only lasts about 30 minutes. The technology was expensive and technically illegal, but desperate times called for flexible ethics. Fair activated the overlay, feeling a tingle as it mapped her surface area. In the reflection, a different Vulpine looked back, shorter fur, different coloration, no identifying marks. We'll go separately, Parker instructed. Kenna and I will enter first, establish ourselves at the bar. Fair, you follow 5 minutes later. Look for the Red Room on the 3rd level. That's where Dravik conducts business. The club, called Nebula, was an assault on the senses. Multiple levels spiraled around a central void filled with light dancers, beings who manipulated pure light into artistic displays. Music from a dozen worlds created a symphony of sound that was both beautiful and slightly nauseating. The air was thick with the scent of exotic drinks, and even more exotic flowers. Fair held her breath as she passed through security. The scanners hummed, but the disguise held. She caught sight of Parker and Kenna at the bar, engaged in what appeared to be a financial negotiation with a group of Valturian merchants. Their natural telepathic abilities made them valuable for brokering deals between species who might not trust each other's words. Following Parker's instructions, she ascended the crystalline stairs to the 3rd level. The atmosphere changed here, less revelry, more serious business. Beings in expensive suits moved between private rooms, their conversations shielded by sound dampeners. The Red Room was exactly where Parker had said it would be. 2 Kalak guards stood outside, beings that resembled nothing so much as walking crystals, their bodies refracting light into dazzling patterns. They were notoriously difficult to fool, as their sensory arrays could detect everything from biometric rhythms to quantum signatures. Fair was about to attempt to talk her way past them when she noticed something. The guards weren't watching the entrance. They were scanning the crowd, their crystalline heads turning in perfect synchronization. Something had them nervous. A commotion at the bar drew her attention. 2 Imperial agents had entered the club, their distinctive black uniforms cutting through the crowd like blades. They were showing a holographic image to the bartender, her image. The disguise overlay beeped softly. 5 minutes until it failed. Think fast. Kenna's voice came through the tiny communicator at her ear. Maintenance access, level 2. Now, Fair didn't question. She moved toward a service corridor, trying not to attract attention. The disguise flickered briefly, causing a nearby patron to do a double take. She increased her pace. The maintenance corridor was dimly lit and smelled of cleaning chemicals. She found Parker waiting at a junction point, tools in hand. Change of plans, he said grimly. Dravik must have known we'd come looking. He alerted palace security. How did you? Kenna intercepted their communications. They know you're here, but not exactly where. The Kalat guards are actually security from off-world. Dravik hired them for extra protection. So we abort? We adapt. Parker pulled out a data spike, a device designed to interface directly with quantum storage systems. I can access Dravik's server from here, but I'll need someone to cause a distraction big enough that he has to access his main terminal directly. What kind of distraction? Parker's smile was predatory. The kind that makes him think someone's trying to steal his most valuable asset. The plan was audacious and highly dangerous. While Parker worked on creating a backdoor into Dravik's system, Fair and Kenna would stage an attempt to steal from the club's vault. This vault, rumored to contain artifacts from various worlds, was both bait and protection. Anyone attempting to breach it would trigger alarms that would bring Dravik running. Kenna had modified a sonic resonator to break through the vault's harmonic locks. The device looked innocent enough, a small sphere that could be mistaken for a decoration. But when activated, it would create vibrations specifically tuned to overcome the vault's defenses. Remember, Parker warned, you don't need to actually steal anything. Just get close enough to trigger the alarms. Dravik will have to personally verify the breach attempt. As her disguise reached its final minute of effectiveness, Fair settled into character. She moved through the crowd with the predatory grace of a professional thief, letting her movements catch the attention of other patrons. By the time she and Kenna approached the vault access, several onlookers had noted her presence. The vault was concealed behind a work of art, a sculpture that shifted between solid and liquid states. Kenna produced the resonator and activated it. Immediately, the sculpture began to react, its state shifts becoming more violent. Alarms blared through the club. Security converged on their position, but Fair and Kenna were already retreating into the crowd. The chaos was exactly what they needed. Vault breach attempt, someone shouted. Level 4. Through the confusion, Fair glimpsed Dravik emerging from an upper level. The Vulpine was unmistakable. His fur was a rare platinum color, and he wore the ceremonial scars of someone who had survived the old gladiatorial traditions. He pushed through his security, heading directly for a concealed terminal. He's accessing the main server. Kenna confirmed through the communicator. Parker's in. 3 agonizing minutes passed. Fair and Kenna had to stay mobile to avoid capture by either club security or the Imperial agents. The disguise overlay had failed completely now, but in the chaos, it was hard for anyone to get a clear look. Download complete. Parker's voice crackled through the communicator. Meet at Extraction Point Gamma. Extraction Point Gamma was the club's delivery entrance, accessible through the kitchens. Fighting their way through confused staff, they reunited with Parker just as the first hover units arrived outside. What did you get? Fair asked as they ran for a waiting vehicle. Everything, Parker said grimly. Communications with Vexura, transaction records, even recordings of planning sessions. There's enough here to expose the entire conspiracy. The drive back to their safe house was tense. Imperial patrols were heavy, responding to alerts about security breaches at the nebula. They took a circuitous route through industrial sectors where human workers provided natural cover. Back at the safe house, Parker began organizing the data into a comprehensive package. The evidence was damning. Princess Vexura had orchestrated not just Fur's framing, but a series of incidents designed to increase tension between humans and Vulpines. The ultimate goal was to convince her father, the Emperor, to implement harsh restrictions that would essentially enslave the human population. What? Fair asked, more to herself than anyone else. Why harbor such hatred? Kenna looked up from her work categorizing files. Fear, she said simply. Humans have been advancing. Our technology, our social structures, they're catching up. Some Vulpines see that as a threat to their superiority. And Vexura represents the younger generation of hardliners, Parker added. They don't want integration. They want domination. A notification chimed on the main terminal. Parker's face grew dark as he read it. What? Fair demanded. Another message from Dravik to Vexura. They know he accessed the files. He turned to face them. They're accelerating their timeline. Vexera plans to announce new restrictions tomorrow at the Festival of Unity. The Festival of Unity was the most significant holiday in the imperial calendar. Originally created to celebrate peace between Vulpine houses, it had evolved into a demonstration of imperial power. Billions would be watching across the sector. If she announces human restrictions at the festival, Kenna's voice trailed off. It becomes imperial law, fair finished. Broadcast across all worlds, received by every governor and administrator. By the time any opposition could organize, it would already be entrenched. We have to stop her, Parker stated flatly. How? Kenna asked. Even with this evidence, we'd never get a hearing before tomorrow. And if we try to go public through regular channels, they'll just silence us. Fair was studying the schematics of the Imperial Palace that Parker had pulled up. There, she pointed to a section. The Grand Amphitheater. That's where Vexera will make her announcement. The Grand Amphitheater is the most secure location in the Empire, Parker protested. Imperial Guard, energy shields, scan zones. I know the security protocols, Fair interrupted. I helped design them. And I know something else. She zoomed in on a portion of the map. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs directly beneath the amphitheater. We use it for emergency evacuations. If we can access it, we could broadcast the evidence directly into the ceremony, Kenna realized. Override the official feed. Parker shook his head in admiration and concern. That's either brilliant or suicidal. Both, Fair admitted. But it's our only chance. The rest of the night was spent preparing. They divided the evidence into redundant packages, each one capable of delivering the full expose. Kenna worked on creating a virus that could penetrate the amphitheater's broadcast systems. Parker assembled equipment they would need for the infiltration. Fair spent her time reviewing Imperial security protocols, updating the team on potential weaknesses. As she worked, memories of her training flooded back. Jarek drilling formations, Vexera watching exercises with her calculating violet eyes, the pride she had felt wearing the Imperial crest. In the quiet moments between preparations, she found herself alone with Parker. You didn't have to do this, she told him. Getting involved, saving me. You had a life here, staying invisible. Parker was calibrating a plasma cutter, not looking up as he responded. We all have our reasons for fighting, Fair. Mine just happened to include making sure the Empire doesn't get away with destroying more good people. Your team, she guessed. The ones who died? He did look up then, his dark eyes shadowed. Friends. Family. People who believed in doing the right thing and paid for it. He returned to his work. I couldn't save them, but maybe I can save you. Save others. The intensity in his voice made something stir in Fur's chest. In all her years of loyal service, she had never felt attracted to anyone, let alone a human. Her entire sense of self had been wrapped up in duty and honor. But here was someone willing to risk everything for justice, who saw her as a person worth saving, not just a symbol of imperial power. She reached across the workbench and touched his hand. Thank you, she said softly, for seeing me, for believing me. Parker's fingers closed around hers. For a moment, they stayed like that, the connection electric with possibility. Then the lights flickered, Kenna running a power check, and the moment passed. Dawn approached far too quickly. The Festival of Unity began before sunrise, with preliminary ceremonies and parades. The main event, where Vexera would speak, was scheduled for midday when both suns hung at their zenith. They approached the Imperial District with forged maintenance passes, wearing work uniforms that Kenna had acquired. The city was already alive with celebration. Thousands of Vulpine citizens traveling to watch the festivities, vendors setting up stalls, musicians playing traditional songs. Fair felt strange wearing a uniform again, even if it was just a maintenance worker's coveralls. Strange and oddly right. She was serving the Empire again, just not in the way she'd been trained. The maintenance entrance was guarded by a single sentry who barely glanced at their credentials. They entered the tunnel system and began the careful journey toward the amphitheater. 15 minutes until the main tunnel junction. Parker consulted his map. That's where we'll be most exposed. Guard patrol there every 6 minutes. They moved through the narrow passages, their footsteps echoing despite their efforts to remain quiet. The weight of what they were attempting pressed down on them. If discovered now, they would be executed as terrorists. The junction point appeared ahead. Parker signaled for them to stop while he activated a portable scanner to detect movement patterns. 2 guards, he whispered. They're lingering. Usually they keep moving. Maybe they've been alerted to watch for unusual activity, Kenneth suggested. Fair shook her head. No, look at their posture through the scanner reflection. They're relaxed, probably complaining about missing the festivities. Can you understand what they're saying? Straining her enhanced vulpine hearing, Fair listened carefully. They're discussing the upcoming announcements. One of them has heard rumors about major policy changes regarding humans. Parker and Kenna exchanged glances. Even the lower-level guards were excited about potential human oppression. We wait for them to move on, Fair decided. But if they don't, we incapacitate and hide them, Parker finished. He produced 2 stun devices. Non-lethal. They'll wake up in a few hours with headaches and memory gaps. The guards finally moved on, continuing their patrol. The team slipped past the junction point and deeper into the tunnels. The schematic showed they were approaching the amphitheater now. The tunnels became wider, better maintained. Here, Fair stopped at what appeared to be a solid wall. Behind this is a service panel that leads directly below the main stage. There should be a terminal we can use to access the broadcast systems. Using the plasma cutter, they carefully opened the panel. Light and sound spilled through. The ceremonial preparation was already underway. Fair could hear Jarek barking orders to the guards, positioning them around the massive amphitheater. They squeezed through the opening and found themselves in a cramped space beneath the stage. Heavy equipment, sound systems, lighting rigs, backup power filled the area. And there, just as Fair had remembered, was a maintenance terminal connected to the primary systems. This is it, Kenna whispered, connecting her devices to the terminal. Starting the upload. A progress bar appeared on her screen. Broadcast override sequence initiated. 12% complete. Above them, the crowd was gathering. Thousands of voices created a constant roar. Through gaps in the stage platform, Fair could glimpse shadows moving. Dignitaries taking their places, Imperial guards lining the perimeter. 22% complete. Can you see who's on stage? Parker asked. Fair maneuvered to get a better view. Most of the royal family. The Emperor, Vexera, is in the heir's position. And her breath caught. Jarek, he's with her, wearing a commander's seal. Promoted for his loyal service, Parker growled. Loyal to the conspiracy. 38% complete. Movement through the floor gaps shifted dramatically. The crowd noise changed, becoming more reverent. Someone important was approaching. His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Kazthak XIII, supreme ruler of the Vulpine Empire, protector of the 7 systems. The announcement boomed through the amphitheater. Emperor Kazthak was elderly but still imposing, his dark fur threaded with silver, his bearing proud. He raised one paw, and the crowd fell silent. My loyal subjects, his voice projected perfectly through the sound systems. Today, at this festival of unity, we address the future of our empire. 52% complete. The upload continued while the Emperor spoke of the Empire's glorious history, its technological advances, its cultural supremacy. But Fair knew the real announcement was coming. However, the Emperor's tone shifted, becoming grave. Recent events have revealed troubling truths about those we have allowed to live among us. 67% complete. The investigation into high treason has uncovered a network of human sympathizers within our own ranks. Beings who would see our traditions diluted, our strength compromised. There was an edge to his voice that Fair had never heard before. The Emperor whom she had sworn to serve sounded like an old man being led by his ambitious daughter. I now yield the platform to Princess Vexera, who has worked tirelessly to expose these threats. 81% complete. Vexera's voice rang out, clear and cold as polar ice. Thank you, Father. Citizens of the Empire, what I am about to share may shock you, but it is necessary truth. 91% complete. Recent analysis has shown that human development, if unchecked, will threaten our cultural dominance within a generation. Their birth rates, their technological adaptability, their capacity for rapid change. These qualities once made them useful to us, but now, 98% complete. Kenna's hands hovered over the final execution command. Ready. I therefore propose, with the full backing of Imperial intelligence and the support of our military commanders, a series of measures to ensure the continued supremacy of the Vulpine Empire. Kenna initiated the override. Every screen in the amphitheater flickered. The sound systems crackled. And then, suddenly, Vexura's voice was replaced by recorded communications. Human sympathies are confirmed. Fair was the perfect scapegoat, respected enough to shock the public, but without the connections to defend herself. The princess's own voice filled the amphitheater. The crowd gasped. Frame her using doctored communications. Make it look like she sold imperial secrets. The public shame ritual will trigger exactly the response we need. Video evidence began playing on every screen. Vexura meeting with Dravik, discussing plans to manage the human population through legal restrictions. Transaction records showing payments to fabricate evidence against Fair. Once Father sees the level of human infiltration, he'll have no choice but to accept stricter measures. We control the narrative. We control the future. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Vexura stood frozen on the stage, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. Imperial guards, trained to obey without question, hesitated as their certainty dissolved. This is a trick. Vexura's voice crackled through feedback. A human deception. But the evidence continued to play. Communications logs signed. Documents, video of Vexura ordering the destruction of any records that might exonerate Fair. Destroy her. Destroy any witnesses. Set an example that will echo through history. The Emperor, who had been standing proud and regal, now slumped as the truth poured over him. He had been manipulated by his own daughter, used as a puppet for her xenophobic crusade. Guards, Jarek tried to rally the Imperial Guard, but confusion reigned. Some moved to arrest Vexura, while others stood protectively around her. The unified force was splitting. "We need to get out," Parker hissed. Now, they had done what they came to do. The truth was out, broadcast not just to the amphitheater, but to every world receiving the official feed. But escape would be difficult with the entire Imperial District in chaos. They crawled back through the access panel, sealing it as best they could. The tunnels echoed with alarms and rushing feet. Guards were flooding the maintenance passages, searching for the source of the broadcast hack. This way, Fair led them through a route she remembered from emergency drills. They moved quickly, but not quickly enough. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves face to face with 3 Imperial guards. Recognition dawned on the lead guard's face. "Former Captain Fair? But you are the broadcasts." "We exposed the truth," Fair said simply. "Princess Vexura has been deceiving the Empire." The guards exchanged uncertain glances. Their training demanded they apprehend her, but the evidence they had just witnessed complicated their certainty. "Let us pass," Fair commanded with the authority she had once held. "Your oath is to serve truth and justice, not political conspiracy." After a tense moment, the lead guard stepped aside. "I saw nothing," he said formally. They hurried past, emerging from the tunnels into the palace gardens. The carefully maintained landscape, usually a symbol of imperial order, was now filled with confusion. Palace staff ran in every direction, some fleeing, others seeking information. Kenna had prepared a final extraction route, a modified private transport that would take them out of the Imperial District and into neutral space. From there, they could monitor how the Empire responded to Vexura's exposed treachery. As they boarded the transport, Fair paused to look back at the spires of the Imperial Palace, gleaming in the twin suns' light. She had served those spires, believed in what they represented. Learning that corruption could exist, even there had shaken her to her core. "Second thoughts?" Parker asked gently. Reflecting, she corrected. "I spent my life defending an ideal. Now, I know ideals need defending from those who claim to serve them." The transport lifted off smoothly, navigating through air traffic that was equally confused and disordered. News feeds were already broadcasting the royal scandal, commentators struggling to make sense of events. Reports from across the empire, a newscaster announced, show mixed reactions to this morning's revelations. Several human colonies have taken the broadcasts as evidence of planned oppression, while others urge caution and legal process. It's going to take time, Kenna observed. The empire won't change overnight, but it will change, Fair stated with certainty. The truth has been released. Minds will open that were closed before. Some will close even tighter, Parker warned. Vexera has supporters who share her beliefs. This might get worse before it gets better. Then we'll need to be ready, Fair said, moving closer to him as the transport cleared the atmosphere. All of us. Parker's arm found its way around her shoulders, a gesture that would have been scandalous mere hours earlier. Now it felt right, a promise of the unity that could exist between their species. The transport continued its course toward the edges of Imperial space, carrying them to an uncertain but hopeful future. Behind them, Vulcanus Prime continued broadcasting the truth, each transmission reaching systems where humans and Vulpines would have to confront the possibility of real unity. In the depths of space, among the stars that belong to all species, three unlikely allies began planning their next move. The Empire had been shaken, its foundations of prejudice exposed. Now came the harder work of building something better in its place. As the twin suns of Vulcanus Prime faded in the distance, Fair felt both loss and liberation. She had lost her position, her certainty about the empire she had served, but she had gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that truth, once revealed, could not be unseen. And perhaps, in Parker's steady presence beside her, she had gained something more personal as well. The stars ahead promised challenges, adventures, and the possibility of a future where humans and Vulpines could stand as equals. It would not be easy. There would be resistance, violence, setbacks. But for the first time, in generations, there was also hope. Where to? Kenna asked from the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls. Fair looked at Parker, then back at Kenna. To wherever we're needed, she said. To wherever we can continue this fight. And the transport, carrying its precious cargo of truth-bearers, disappeared into the infinite promise of space.